Welcome in, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Protests rage as President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu get ready to meet at the White House. Plus, wildfires rage out west in California, putting a lot of people on the run. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Our video monitors take us right now to video watching the White House, where President Joe Biden will meet any minute now with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. CBS News' Natalie Brandt outside watching this one closely. Natalie, we understand the vice president will meet with Netanyahu a little bit later today, but these talks are crucial right now because we understand there are some hostage negotiations happening also in real time.
That's right. And you can see we are awaiting the Israeli prime minister, who should be arriving any minute now, or beginning to arrive behind me. As you mentioned, these ceasefire negotiations at a crucial moment. A senior administration official briefing reporters yesterday said that they believe that a deal is closable and that they are reaching that phase. So the discussions here between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu will really focus in large part on how to iron out those final details. What does closing this deal look like? And notably, the two will also meet with the families of hostages still held in Gaza, American-Israeli hostages. We heard from some of them yesterday as we've been reporting on the Prime Minister's speech before Congress. A lot of lawmakers and pro-Israeli demonstrators who have opposed Netanyahu, they say that they were looking for more details in that speech yesterday about the path forward, what the day after this war looks like, and how to finally close these negotiations and bring all the hostages home. I also want to tell you, Reed, that there is big security fencing outside of the White House again today. We can hear some demonstrations in the distance. Notably, Vice President Harris put out a strong statement this morning condemning some of the actions that we saw yesterday by demonstrators late in the day at Union Station. That included burning American flags and vandalizing some of the statues there. She said, "What we saw was despicable acts by unpatriotic protesters and dangerous hate-fueled rhetoric." She says, "I condemn any individuals associating with the brutal terrorist organization Hamas." She goes on to say, "I support the right to peacefully protest, but let's be clear, anti-Semitism, hate, and violence of any kind have no place in our nation." Reed.
All right, Natalie Brandt, and just for our viewers to punctuate how we are live and things break right there on TV, you just saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's black SUV go right behind Natalie, and then we were able to turn that video around to show him entering the White House. We understand the first handshakes are happening as we speak. Natalie, thank you so much. So after Washington, Benjamin Netanyahu flies to Florida. He's going to Mar-a-Lago to meet with former President Donald Trump. That will happen tomorrow. Keep in mind, this will be the first in-person meeting between Trump and Netanyahu since the former president left the White House. You're looking at file video there of that meeting at that time. You know, all of this comes after what was a multi-stop tour of the halls of power in Washington for Netanyahu. You know, we're talking about members of Congress right now about to go on recess as we look at the Capitol Live. But CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland is live on the stream right now. Scott, we understand some last votes are expected today. Overall, now that we've had a day to digest it, what's the reaction by lawmakers to what the prime minister had to say? He was very firm.
And this Congress is going to have to approve aid, more foreign aid for humanitarian needs and more foreign aid for military needs for Israel if they're going to sustain this war against Hamas. And Prime Minister Netanyahu is addressing a Congress that is having difficulty moving on anything involving money, including foreign aid. I'm not sure at this moment if he changed hearts and minds about the war on Hamas. There are dozens of congressional Democrats who outright boycotted that speech. But whatever he said to them is going to come full circle when they have to approve more foreign aid. That's the response to his address yesterday. Now that the Prime Minister's moved on to the White House, Congress has moved on to two other things. I'll note the votes today, one very political in the U.S. House, one potentially very substantive in the U.S. Senate. Read the House today, along nearly party lines, approved a resolution criticizing Vice President Harris for her work on the administration's border initiatives. Pure party line vote. Nothing to see here, won't become law. The U.S. Senate began the afternoon trying to get a test vote on a bill that would protect children more vigorously on social media, creating new safeguards and new safety rules for social media giants to ensure children are less prone to being targeted on social media. It's called the Kids Online Safety Act. It doesn't become law today, but it is expected to pass a test vote in the Senate, Reid, which could put it on a trajectory towards actually becoming law by the end of the year.
Scott McFarland, ever a Rolodex on what is new now and next. Thank you so much. We appreciate your report. So teachers in Texas are going to get a chance to hear Vice President Kamala Harris. She's going to be speaking at the American Federation of Teachers gathering. In fact, she did that, and she spoke about the importance of teaching. And while she did it, she attacked former President Donald Trump and that Project 2025 you're hearing a lot about. Listen.
While you teach students about democracy and representative government, extremists attack the sacred freedom to vote. While you try to create safe and welcoming places where our children can learn, extremists attack our freedom to live safe from gun violence. They have the nerve to tell teachers to strap on a gun in the classroom, while they refuse to pass common sense gun safety laws. And while you teach students about our nation's past, these extremists attack the freedom to learn and acknowledge our nation's true and full history, including book bans. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2024.
Kamala Harris talking tough on Trump. She is on her way back to Washington, where she will sit down and meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But, you know, talking about the climate in Washington, Democrats appear to be coalescing around Kamala Harris. In fact, our cameras were there as Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi addressed the Democratic women of Congress about her confidence and her history with Kamala Harris. Listen to this.
And what Kamala Harris is about, and I've known her for decades, I know her officially, her strength. Kamala is about strength and determination in terms of public policy. We know most recently in terms of a woman's right to choose, but the list is vast, as Whip Clark mentioned. I know her personally. She's a person of great faith, of deep faith, and commitment to public service in the most unselfish way. And again, politically, make no mistake, this is a politically astute vice president of the United States. I've seen her in action. I can talk about it on another occasion at more length, but let me just say, she is capable officially, personally, and politically to lead us to victory in November.
So you see there, Democrats among women rallying behind the vice president in the race to the White House. But key in that Harris strategy is going to be this: young voters. We want to show you new polling numbers from Axios. This gives us a preliminary test of that crucial voter bloc. 45% of voters ages 18 to 34 say they have a favorable opinion of the vice president. Now compare that to 33% over Joe Biden. So things have gone up since he pulled out of the race. The survey also asked about a Biden-Trump matchup or a Harris-Trump duel. Get this, 53% for Biden, 47% for Trump. But switch out Biden for Harris. Numbers also jump. 60% are for Harris, 40% for Donald Trump. We're going to talk numbers of a tragic sort when we come back. Wildfire continues raging in California. The acres and the numbers of homes burned. We're watching the monitors. CBS News 24/7 back after the break. Well, here's a headline. U.S. military fighter jets intercepted Russian and Chinese bombers over near the coast of Alaska. Check out this video from our monitors from the Russian Defense Ministry. They show the jets right there in the sky. Officials tell CBS News 2 Russian and 2 Chinese aircraft entered what is known as the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone yesterday. Despite all this, the North American Aerospace Defense Command says activity from the Russian and Chinese bombers was not seen as a threat, but they got an escort out of that space nonetheless. Lawmakers in Washington not done yet with their investigation into the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. And word today of a task force designed to investigate. 7 Republicans and 6 Democrats leading that charge will have subpoena authority while they dig deeper. Those findings expected to be released about a month after the general election, sometime in December. Meantime, the acting Secret Service director getting ready to testify before senators next week. We're talking about this man. His name is Ronald Rao. He's tapped to lead the agency after the resignation of Kimberly Cheadle. By the way, the deputy director of the FBI also set to testify next week. Our video feeds now taking us to Texas, where former Uvalde police officer Adrian Gonzalez told a judge he is not guilty on charges of abandoning and failing to protect children during that massacre at Robb Elementary, in Uvalde 2 years ago. Gonzalez is accused of waiting more than 70 minutes to confront that shooter inside the school, and in that time, 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered. A grand jury indicted Gonzalez and former Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo in June. All right, so we jump our map now. We're going to the state of Oregon, where our video feeds show us this. It's a wildfire near the Oregon-Idaho border. It is ripping up a huge area. In fact, that area is so big, it's larger than the city of Indianapolis. Let's zoom in closer and see that glowing gold fire there, lapping up a lot of dry brush. This one has a name. It's called the Durkee Fire. It's exploding in size. As with many wildfires out west, it's really the perfect storm. We're talking about powerful winds, hundreds of lightning strikes. In all, 3 people injured, 2 homes and 12 structures burned. So far, firefighters say 0 containment at this hour. We also want to show you this video coming to us out of Northern California, a new wildfire and a glimpse of what this one looks like. In fact, you can see it's almost like a tornado of fire there, people driving through the inferno. And firefighters really are doing battle, saying that more than 45,000 acres have been burned. So far, only 3% containment. So Rachel Wolf is live in the fire zone. She's in Butte County. Rachel, we see you once again. We also see smoke there. Tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing and word of evacuation orders.
So when we came out, we got the call about 2 o'clock in the morning. They said, this is 6,500 acres. We're like, okay, we're heading up the mountain. I'm from this area. I went to Chico State. I'm very familiar with Bidwell Park. Upper Bidwell is an area where people like to recreate. They hike, bike, and such. That's where the fire started. Then it jumped to 45,000 acres. Look at this plume right here above me. This is gigantic. And that heavy equipment right there, that dozer, we've seen about 15 or 20 of those go up the hill in the last 20 minutes. And you know what that says to me, having covered fires for a long time, is that the fire is in those back little valleys, hollows, ravines that are tough to get to firefighting wise, and they're doing what's called a break. They're bulldozing to make a dirt or break where there's no vegetation to stop that fire. And one of the issues is a lot of these stumps, right? The fire ripped through this area, and so it leaves behind these types of stumps that burn, and the embers from that can then blow when the wind swirls, and the wind's starting to pick up a little bit, and when it's swirling, it's tough to predict, and it'll blow that and start a fire elsewhere. The good news this morning is that the good news about this is that it's not blowing towards Chico, and it's blowing away from Chico, because there was a real concern this morning that the fire was going to be hitting that first line, that subdivision that was about a mile away. So there was a lot of worry, and then people were lined up just watching in their cars. We saw horse trailers filled with animals, people that didn't want to go to the evacuation center, but you know, it's unfolding as we speak, and right now, if that wind picks up, it could get bigger, so that's the concern.
Rachel, it's just so compelling to see that fire burning right over your shoulder, and then above you, that massive plume of smoke. Please be safe, and thank you to you and your crew for that live report. Okay, so let's bring in Jess right now. Jess, the concern is about the wind and the smoke.
Absolutely. The wind right now in areas like Oregon, just along that border, stretching down into California, are anywhere up to around 40 miles per hour as we head into the Klamath Basin just north of that fire. Now, I want to mention one thing real fast. As we take a look at the National Weather Weather Service and the advisories issued by them. All that gray you see behind me right now, that's the air quality advisories that are still in effect right now in the state of Oregon, with over 31 fires currently burning. You head just south past Shasta into Tehama County within the overnight hours. From 1,500 to 45,000, we have seen that fire multiply, and we continue to keep a close eye on that as we head into the coming days. We're also dealing with red flag warnings, low relative humidity mixed with all that dry brush. And to add to that, windy conditions, this is fire season in full force right now in the state of California as well as Oregon. So we're keeping a close eye on the Pacific Northwest. Right behind me, here's what's going on as we head into the coming days. Right now, we're watching that smoke plume, not only in the fire down south closer to Riverside, but all the way up into the Park Fire, continue to sweep all that smoke off into the east. We watch that develop as we head into the coming days on our forecasted models. That mixed with the poor air quality in Oregon sweeps over into the state of Idaho, all the way over into Montana, where record-breaking numbers have been happening for our daytime highs. So we're dealing with poor air quality in that region, really hot temperatures, and to add to that, we still have a chance of dry lightning in the forecast heading into the next few days. A marginal and a slight risk right now in our severe weather outlook, but taking a look right below me, these temperatures that we're dealing with heading into the next couple days in areas like Montana, they're no joke. We're talking about 90s in the forecast, still triple digits widespread throughout the west. There's a lot to talk about, Reed, but we're going to have more on that coming up in just a bit, as well as what's going on down south right there. You can see that green in Texas, floods right around the corner.
Wow, and it's just amazing to me and sort of haunting to think that a wildfire in California, the smoke is being seen up into Montana.
I know.
Just shows you how huge it is.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that. Hey, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the Olympics in Paris and a visit by the First Lady of the United States. CBS News 24/7, streaming coast to coast and worldwide. Until we come back, we'll be watching these monitors. Our video monitor is taking us to a live look in Chicago. The U.S. Secret Service talking tightened security for the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. So after the assassination attempt on the life of former President Donald Trump, this news conference and this convention getting some big backup talk. This morning, the U.S. Secret Service and its public safety partners detailed the kind of measures that they're going to take to make sure this year's DNC is as safe as possible.
There will be temporary street closures that will begin near the United Center at approximately 7 p.m. on August 17th and remain in place throughout the duration of the convention and into the early morning hours of August 23rd. Vehicles entering this area will be subject to screening. They must enter the area through a vehicle checkpoint where they will briefly be screened by law enforcement. At the United Center, access to the pedestrian restricted perimeter is restricted to those that are credentialed individuals and have a need to be there, such as convention attendees, staff, workers, volunteers, and public safety.
White-hot attention on the practices of the U.S. Secret Service at this point in time in history, so they are taking no chances. By the way, the Democratic National Convention is slated to run from August 19th to the 22nd. We want to show you this video. We just got out of Taiwan, and look at that. The aftermath of a typhoon. You can see it right there on the monitor. Roads and businesses inundated with floodwaters. We're starting to hear about the catastrophe to human life. At least 2 people dead. That number could go up, though, as rescuers get in these streets that are still waterlogged. This is the strongest typhoon to hit that island in 8 years. We understand winds of up to 141 miles per hour, if you can even conceive of winds that high, and driving with all of the rain, right? So we can tell you right now, offices and schools, even financial markets are shuttered there in Taiwan as more rain is expected today. Our video feed's also taking us to floods from a different part of the world. This is Vermont. Families and farmers, well, they depend on flood recovery centers right now. We're talking about more than 2,200 homes damaged, along with hundreds of businesses there. Roads and bridges in some parts destroyed. You can see roads just completely sunk there. A lot of people are hoping that state leaders can get FEMA to come in and give disaster aid to try to get them the money that they need to recover from that. But floods, another theme here in these United States as we look at this Main Street USA, Jess.
Absolutely. From Vermont all the way into the Carolinas along the coast right now, the National Weather Service has issued flood advisories. But one I specifically want to talk about is over in Texas. See all that green? That's the flood watch that's still in effect right now from that stationary front that's just been sitting right offshore, delivering heavy amounts of rain to that coastline in areas all along Corpus Christi up into Houston even, with over 2 to 4 inches expected still in the forecasted models. Taking a look right behind me, gearing up for the next 74 hours, we're going to continue to watch more storms build in from offshore. This is a slow-moving storm system that's building its way in, and we have lots to talk about with this. Taking a look anywhere from Houston all the way down to the coastline, Brownsville, Corpus Christi, Galveston. We've been watching these active storms stay just over these communities where the ground is already so saturated, it's just turning into major flooding in these local communities, stretching over into Louisiana. So taking a look at the forecasted models, within the next 72 hours, we could see anywhere up to around 3 inches additionally added to that number. Near Galveston, about 2 inches in areas like New Orleans, all the way over into the city of Houston. We will continue to monitor this as we head into the coming days and all the aftermath from that forecasted flooding too. There's lots to break apart with this, Reed. I'm going to send it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. So we want to show our viewers video of First Lady Jill Biden just hours after she sat with her husband in the Oval Office during his big address to the nation. The First Lady left that address and then hopped a plane and traveled to Paris to speak to U.S. athletes.
You, parents, siblings, spouses, kids, have believed in them. Through the late nights and the hard days, you've helped them get back up when they fell down. You've moved across the country, all so that our world can know their greatness.
Opening ceremonies start tomorrow. All right, you saw it live right here on the stream during this broadcast. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu entering the White House to sit down and talk with President Joe Biden. When we come back, we have images from that meeting, from that introduction, before the press was asked to leave. Those talks are high level. CBS News 24/7 back after the break. So we've been watching live on our monitors out of Washington, D.C. right now because we know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just went inside the White House to have a sit-down with President Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and listen in to video we just got off the monitors in our feeds just a moment ago of that first few moments. Okay. You know what? More happened than just that. Sometimes computers glitch, right? We all learned that. We're going to figure out why that glitched. But I just had a chance in the commercial break to see what happened. Started out very calm. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talking about the first time he met with President Joe Biden. Now we have that. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Well, welcome back, Mr. Prime Minister. We got a lot to talk about. I think we should get to it, but the floor is yours.
Mr. President, we've known each other for 40 years, and you've known every Israeli Prime Minister for 50 years, from Golda Meir. So from a proud Jewish Zionist to a proud Irish-American Zionist, I want to thank you for 50 years of public service and 50 years of support for the State of Israel. And I look forward to discussing with you today and working with you in the months ahead on the great issues before us.
I look forward to it as well. By the way, that first meeting with Prime Minister Golda Meir, and she had an assistant sitting next to me, a guy named Rabin. That's how far back it goes. I was only 12 then. Anyway, thank you all for being here.
And there are the sounds of the questions starting to bombard the two world leaders. Now, keep in mind, they are talking now in person for the first time. Remember, it was March when President Joe Biden dug down and said he was going to have a, quote, sit-down, come-to-Jesus meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So maybe that's why the press was ushered out right after that. Keep in mind, a lot of things are at play right now, not the least of which talks with Hamas about trying to get those hostages released. President Joe Biden would like that to be a part of his administration, to be able to stand at the microphone and say all hostages have been released. We will wait and see. Now, let's talk more about the prime minister and where he's going next. You see this old video here. This was in the White House. The next time he sits down with this man, former President Donald Trump, it will be at Mar-a-Lago. And Netanyahu will fly to Florida for that. He'll be at Mar-a-Lago to meet with former President Donald Trump tomorrow. This will be the first in-person meeting between Trump and Netanyahu since the former president left the White House. Meantime, the families of those hostages we were just talking about being held in Gaza marched in Tel Aviv while the prime minister gave his address to Congress yesterday. Not everybody was happy about that. Deborah Pata has more from Israel on reaction to Netanyahu's address.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's defiant address to Congress on Wednesday has not gone down well amongst both Palestinians in Gaza and protesters in Israel. During the speech, he barely mentioned the hostage deal and dismissed as utter nonsense criticisms by the United Nations, human rights group and the International Criminal Court that Israel's government has committed war crimes in Gaza. The speech was beamed live to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv and was met with either boos or stony silence by protesters. The only thing they want to hear from their prime minister is that there is a deal. Netanyahu's address was also in sharp contrast to the reality on the ground in Gaza. Against abundant evidence and assessments by the Biden administration, he said Israel has not blocked humanitarian aid from entering the territory. He also boasted that Israel's military has caused very few civilian casualties by taking unprecedented steps to protect them, which starkly contradicts accounts from our CBS News team in Gaza, who have witnessed women and children being brought into hospitals either injured or dead on a daily basis. Authorities there say the death toll is now well over 39,000. Former Israeli diplomat to the U.S., Alon Pincus, told us it appeared Netanyahu had invited former hostages and families of those still in Gaza to listen to his address merely as props, adding that the Israeli leader seems to think a speech is a substitute for policy and that right now Netanyahu is the one holding up a deal. Read?
All right, so protests in Tel Aviv, and, just a moment ago, Vice President Kamala Harris released a statement really sternly condemning protests in our nation's capital, saying she's all for free speech, but she is not for hate speech. Right after she released that statement, she went to Texas, and you see her there taking to the mic. She's addressing teachers there, and teachers got a first chance to hear from the Vice President in person. This was in Houston at the American Federation of Teachers gathering. We have a chance now to listen to how she is trying to win over educators in the Lone Star State.
From the public service workers and higher education faculty to the school bus drivers and the custodians to the school nurses and our teachers, you all do God's work educating our children, the whole ecosystem of who are AFT members. It is you who have taken on the most noble of work, which is to concern yourself with the well-being of the children of America, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And I thank you also for your support over the years and for being the first union to endorse me this week.
So let's go from politics to fires of a different sort. These are real, jumping the map to Northern California right now, a new wildfire. And this one, as you're about to see, it's a monster. In fact, get this in your mind, 7 times larger in just the overnight hours. The park fire forcing mandatory evacuations as 45,000 acres burn. You can see the red-hot glow of the fire there in the night. It is eating up dry brush that has dried out since so many rains hit California earlier in the year, caused things to grow up and then dry out without rain. Containment right now is just 3%. So let's pull up a visual that will really help all of us see the size of the fire and the spread. This is video near the city of Chico, and we want to show you what's known as the evacuation zone. Look close. You see that area shaded in red? Well, people living in those communities, they are on the run, and that's a big swath there on the map. The yellow areas just below that and then over to the side, they show areas where people are told to be ready to evacuate, but so far it's just a warning. They are not yet ordered out. But let's talk right now to Diego Moctezuma in our CBS affiliate in Chico. He's live on the stream. Diego, we understand we have a little bit of a satellite delay, but please set the scene and let us know what people are doing.
Yes, I'm on Cohasset Road, just off of Sycamore Valley Road, which you can see behind me here. This is north of Chico. Now take a look as I'm going to step out of the camera and show you a lot of this smoke and hot spots that you can see right here. Now, I've been out here all morning, and I've seen several buildings and homes that have burned from this fire. Now, a lot of people are asking us to check their homes. So I'm going to show you some of the destruction that has happened from this fire. Now, a warning, you may find this difficult to look at. Now, this is video from around 7:30 a.m. this morning that I took in the residential neighborhood of Sycamore Valley Road. You can see a number of homes destroyed by this park fire. Now, I counted at least 5 homes just here on Sycamore Valley Road alone that burned down. Now, I also spoke with the CAL Fire chief, who says they have saved a number of homes and that many of them are still standing. Now, CAL Fire has not officially reported anything in terms of total buildings or homes destroyed. But right now we know this fire has burned at least 45,550 acres, and it is 3% contained. There are dozens of zones under evacuation orders right now, hundreds of people forced out of their homes. Now, this fire has already burned through this area where I'm at again on Cohasset Road, but there are plenty of firefighters, going back and forth here on Cohasset Road and Sycamore Valley Road just behind me here, making sure that these hotspots are good and that no other fire sparks here and spreads even more. Now, one evacuee who I talked to says he actually stayed behind and worked to save his home. Yes, he is a firefighter. He says that he knows just about all of his neighbors in this area here on Sycamore Valley Road got out safely. Live in Butte County, I'm Diego Moctezuma.
Diego, thank you so much for that picture and the frantic rush to save homes, and we're so sorry for those who've lost their homes. Let's jump the map now south of that to Ventura County and another fire burning out of control. This is video off our feeds that show you right now why people there are ordered to get out and evacuate. And while they run, they're looking at pictures of flames and smoke from that fire line. This fire in particular is 1,500 acres and counting. Let's go from California to Canada right now. Video coming to us from the Canadian resort town of Jasper. Same situation there. A lot of homes burned. And in this case, some pretty high terrain there. Firefighters literally having to fight this from the sky and on the ground. Fire threatening that resort town in Jasper National Park. We are watching that one as well. Jessica, it seems like from the United States up into Canada, we just can't catch a break from wildfires.
That is true. And one thing to mention about that air quality, too. Right now, the winds are moving really strong from the west all the way into the east. So all those areas just east of California and Oregon are dealing with some really poor air quality. Right below me, you can see all that gray on this map. These are advisories issued by the National Weather Service. The gray showing air quality advisories, and then to add to that, all that pink, those are red flag warnings. When you have dry conditions mixed with strong winds, those are 2 main ingredients for fire weather conditions, and that's exactly what's going on right now all throughout the states from Oregon up into Washington as well as California. Oregon has 31 fires currently burning. California dealing with one of the largest fires we've seen just blow up in the overnight hours, already up to 45,000 acres in communities just to the east of Chico. Now, daytime highs today, this is something I also want to mention. We're still sitting well above average for this time of year. 90s in Billings. We just broke records yesterday in Montana. To add to that, a similar trend over in Idaho with well above average temperatures. I want to go right back to the smoke real fast. I mentioned it a second ago. The winds are continuing to bring those smoke plumes all throughout the state of California, off into Nevada, all the way up into Idaho. We're seeing a similar trend with the winds sweeping in that smoke from from communities from Oregon. Now, we're going to continue to keep a close eye on that. And one last thing I want to mention, too. There's still some active storms up in areas like Montana, Idaho, all the way down into Nevada and California. And there could be a chance of dry lightning associated with this. So we continue to monitor the severe weather outlook heading into the coming days. Reed?
All right, Jess, you're a pilot. I want you to listen to this story. Big changes coming to Southwest Airlines. So how do you feel about assigned seating, America? Well, it is coming to Southwest for the first time in that company's history. Assigned seating. Southwest will also start charging, though, for premium seats. You'll get more legroom, but you're going to pay more. They'll start offering overnight red-eye flights also for the first time. So the airline says that the changes are the next step to elevate their customer experience. Passengers Rhonda and Cheryl in Texas, they have some raised eyebrows.
I'm happy with the way it works right now.
Why? I mean, if it's not broke, why fix it? I love the system now. We always spring for the A group, and we come here early, and we line up when they call the A group or the B group in case we didn't get in the A group that time, and we take any seat we want.
Well, Rhonda, well, Cheryl, this morning, Southwest CEO Bob Jordan says most customers want assigned seating.
This is what our customers want. 80% of customers that fly Southwest today want an assigned seat. 86% of customers that don't fly Southwest want an assigned seat. And when a customer defects from Southwest to another competitor, it's the #1 reason. So it's the right thing at the right time.
No details on when these changes will go into effect, but the premium seats will not be available until next year. I think Bob needs to get on the phone to Rhonda and Cheryl in Texas. All right, when we come back, we've got our eye on America. We're going to take you down to Louisiana and the plight of those who fish the waters there. We're back. All right, you got to see this video, and this is a headline. U.S. military fighter jets intercepted Russian and Chinese bombers over near the coast of Alaska. Look at that. This video from our monitors from the Russian Ministry of Defense, it shows the jets in air. So officials tell CBS News 2 Russian and 2 Chinese aircrafts entered what is known as the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone yesterday. They got an escort out and fast. The North American Aerospace Defense Command says activity from the Russian and Chinese bombers was, quote, not seen as a threat, close quote. Well, lawmakers in Washington not done with their investigation into that assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. Word today, they've created a very special task force to investigate. Special and powerful, that is. 7 Republicans, 6 Democrats will lead the charge, and they will have the authority to subpoena investigation materials and documents. We understand they will get all of that. They will make their assessment, and that full report will be released sometime in the month of December. Meantime, and you see his face there, acting Secret Service Director is getting ready to testify before senators next week. We're talking about Ronald Rao. He was tapped to lead that agency after the resignation of Kimberly Cheadle. The Deputy Director of the FBI also getting ready to testify. Okay, our video feed's now taking us to the Philippines. People in Manila are coming home to find a muddy mess after a typhoon just dumped heavy rain and caused a lot of flooding. And in the midst of this, at least 12 people known to be dead, hundreds of thousands of others out in the streets displaced. The typhoon did not make landfall in the Philippines, but it intensified that seasonal monsoon rain they deal with. That caused landslides and flooding over the past few days, and the mandate to dig out and look for their belongings there in the mud and try to put their lives back together. Jessica, Mother Nature meaning business there.
And it's hard to put yourself in their shoes even watching that imagery. Now, I will say the National Weather Service here in our states, they've been advising us with lots of flood watches throughout the states, all highlighted in green. You can see over near the Carolinas. Lots of activity there, but the ground has been saturated for quite some time in the great state of Texas, specifically along the coastline near Corpus Christi, Galveston, and all the way over into Houston, too, where we have seen heavy storms from the stationary front just sit over that whole region. And we continue to watch those clouds really build as we head into the coming days. Take a look right behind me. Here's what's going on. On Futurecast, we can actually watch the storm throughout the next 72 hours develop as it slowly tracks its way off into Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Alabama. But the big concern, like I said, it's the saturated grounds just over the city of Houston, all the way along that coastline too. Now, throughout the next 72 hours, we could see an additional 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. You look at that number and you think, okay, 2 to 3 inches, that's reasonable, but that ground is saturated. They've already received over 5 inches so far along that coastline. This is no joke, and many community members right now are dealing with heavy flooding in effect throughout the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. So I'm going to have more on that in a bit, but Reed, I'm going to send it over to you.
We've got our eye on America. It's our mission to hear your stories in your communities and really listen to the issues that impact your everyday lives. Today, we take you to Louisiana, looking into shrimp, oysters, and liquefied natural gas. There's a battle unfolding that has some commercial fishermen and producers of LNG squaring off. It's all a part of a bigger story about a massive increase in fossil fuel production in America. A story CBS's Ben Tracy is reporting on from the Louisiana Gulf Coast.
When Travis Darter and his fellow commercial fishermen spread their nets into these Louisiana waters, there used to be just one word to describe it.
Happiness. Happiness. Yeah, we love what we do, right?
This channel flowing into the Gulf of Mexico is famous for its shrimp. Now it's known for something else.
It's like a nightmare, but when you wake up, it's still there, right?
He's talking about this liquefied natural gas export terminal called Calcasieu Pass, or CP, built next to the town of Cameron. LNG is natural gas that is supercooled into a liquid, so it can be loaded onto tankers and shipped around the world. The CP plant is owned by a company called Venture Global.
We used to have shrimp boats tied all along where this plane is.
He says they had to relocate their boats and their catch has dropped dramatically.
Got one shrimp.
He also moved his family out of Cameron, worried about air pollution from the plant.
Hell yeah, I'm mad as hell.
Venture Global denied our request for an interview, but in a statement said there are no impacts from our projects on fishing or shrimping in the area. Its CP plant is one of 8 operating LNG export terminals in the U.S. 7 more are under construction. Capacity has more than tripled since 2018 and is expected to double again by 2030. Climate activists call these new LNG plants carbon bombs. Natural gas, while considered cleaner than coal, still produces both carbon dioxide and methane emissions that are rapidly warming the planet. These new LNG projects could operate for decades, long past when scientists say the world must stop burning fossil fuels.
We are the largest exporter of natural gas in the world.
We spoke to Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm just after the White House ordered a pause on approvals of new LNG exports in January.
The pause is about what is going to happen to our economy and what is going to happen with greenhouse gas emissions. Those who are asking us to look at this have it right.
This is not the right decision.
Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill is one of 16 state attorneys general who just convinced a federal judge to temporarily lift the federal LNG pause while litigation against it proceeds. She says the pause hurts Louisiana's economy.
The country and the world is going to need natural gas.
Do you worry about the potential climate impacts?
No.
Why
because
not?
that's not my job. I mean, my job is to hold them accountable under the law.
One could also argue it's not your job to worry about the economic benefits of a particular industry.
So it doesn't just affect the industry. It affects our tax base. It affects our communities. It affects our whole state.
Travis Darter is worried about 2 more LNG plants likely to be built along this channel and what that means for his livelihood.
Yeah, he's dead. Well, I mean, we're literally fighting for our lives here.
A fight he can't afford to lose. For Eye on America, Ben Tracy, Cameron, Louisiana.
All right, we want to leave you today with some live images of the White House. We know that inside these walls, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Joe Biden are sitting down to talk about the state of Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza and much more. That's it for us on CBS News 24/7. When we see it, you'll see it. Thanks for watching.